Yet there is a sort of weird pleasure out of showing a film that you don't like and lots of people are going to see it for some reason. But the way that I look at things is obviously, you know, has a film got an audience, which is really important? Is there a political or social reason for the film? Is the film maybe to back talent that may not necessarily be in this film but may lead on to something else? And so you're actually getting involved in something for the relationship. So you might lose money on this, but you may make a deal that, okay, I'm going to lose money on this, but I'm going to make sure that I'm in your second film. I'm going to do your second film. And the other thing is brand building and trying to buy films for your brand, something that's meaningful, something that's really great. And you can't really measure what that does for you. You might not see the immediate result of that, but over time, if you keep doing that, you just can't do any of these things all the time. It's just, there has to be a balance by doing those things. And I've got a couple of really good examples of, you will tell me when I go over time because I haven't timed anything out. Okay. I've got really good examples of this, of doing things for different reasons. The first, when I started Hopscotch, I went to the film festival, and the first film we bought was Bowling for Columbine, which at the time, to be honest, I didn't even know who Michael Moore was. I'd never heard of the guy. And I saw the film, and I don't know if anyone can remember. It was sort of post September 11. We'd just gone into Iraq, and I remember seeing the film and thinking, it just totally blew me away in terms of what he had to say about the world. And at that time, I think documentaries just weren't released in cinemas, but you know, we really believed in it from a political standpoint, and we brought that film home. I remember buying a number of films that year in Cannes, and Bowling for Columbine was kind of the riskiest buy, but it ended up being obviously the most successful out of all those films. And it led to, you know, buying Bowling for Columbine meant that, you know, we had, you know, a first look on Fahrenheit 9/11, which we ended up getting involved in very, very early before the film was shot. And that ended up being, until Mao's Last Dance, our highest grossing film of all time and the highest grossing documentary in Australian history. And so that's an example of getting involved for the right reasons and having it turn out. And I've got a flip side example of that, which is about 2 years ago in Toronto, my buying partner saw a film that just completely blew us away, and it was called The Hurt Locker. And we saw this film and we really loved it. And then I went back to the hotel and I brought up all the figures for every Iraqi-themed movie that had ever been made, and it was all really, really terrible. And I came back to her and I said, we can't do this movie. I love this film, but this film's just not going to work. No one makes money out of films about Iraq. And after a year, it was looking like a pretty good theory. The film didn't really do very well, didn't get released. And then, you know, when it got nominated for 10 Academy Awards, I think that was probably one of the worst days of my career. And I was really kicking myself because we really knew it was a great film, and it was it was a time of not backing your taste and actually thinking things through too much. And so, look, it's really hard. What I do is basically based on my instincts, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. So I think it's really important to understand that you are not the audience for what you do. A lot of people who I think are not very successful at what they do kind of run everything through their own taste gambit. And, you know, as I said, that's not really me in a way. I need to have other opinions. I need to know what other people think. My taste in films is normally pretty good, but I've got some pretty wobbly ones out there as well. And, you know, I really like Zoolander, for instance. So I think it's important to really listen to people. And it's really important to back the instincts of other people as well. One of the stories I have is a really weird film that we got involved in called What the Bleep Do We Know? Does anyone know that film?
Yeah. It's great.
Which I thought was completely, like, I didn't understand it. I thought it was really bad. I thought it was really bad filmmaking. I really hated it. And I was with my business partner who, like, came out of the cinema and he just absolutely loved it. He just thought it really spoke to him. I just couldn't believe how bad the filmmaking was, and the dramatisation I just thought was terrible. And I didn't really find it very meaningful either. But I stayed in the project because he really believed in it, and that film, I think to date, we've sold something like 60,000 DVD units. So the talent in that was not really my taste. It was just the ability to be able to let go of my opinion and back somebody else. And I think that's something that you all have to do if you're running a creative business, is that if it is based on taste and it is about the public, you can never ever second guess the public, and you yourself are never going to have the instincts to know what the public wants and everything. The other lesson that I've learned is that, I'll end with this, I don't know how am I going for time?
Going okay.
Okay. I've always had this thing that if you really love something and you back it, then at some point you win, even if it's an abject failure financially. And I've got a lot of examples of that, of films that I've fallen in love with and taken it back here, and no one's gone to see them. But you'd lose, but in some way you win. But every time I've tried to kind of pick a trend in the market and tried to cynically buy a film for an audience, and it doesn't work, that's really, really painful, because you don't get any win. You just sort of lose on both sides. So if in doubt, I think go with what you love, because at least you kind of win something. And I think at the end of it, when all is said and done, the things that you remember from your film experiences are not necessarily the amount of money that you made. I mean, I mentioned Fahrenheit 9/11 before, and that film did extremely well at the box office, but it was actually one of the most terrible experiences in my whole career, which I won't go into, but it was basically dealing with Harvey Weinstein and it was horrible. And so the most kind of exciting, amazing financial windfall for the company was also the most desperately painful experience of my career. And the moments that are really special for me are not necessarily the financial ones. So, I mean, last year we were involved in a film called Bright Star, Jane Campion's film, and had been involved for many, many years, and had become, very close to the filmmakers on a personal level. And the film was selected for competition at Cannes, and we, saw the film with an audience, in tuxedos and the whole bit. And the film ended and got this incredible sort of 10-minute standing ovation. And that was a really, really special moment. The film hasn't been the most financially successful film that we've ever done, but it's probably the most special film that we've done for me. And another great experience was last year doing Mao's Last Dancer, and going into, I didn't have any free tickets, even though we produced the movie. So I went with my partner to Hoyt's George Street, or Greater Union George Street, on Tight Ass Tuesday. And we couldn't get into the first session because it was sold out, which I thought was fantastic. And then we had to go to the next session, and we had to sit at these, there was only 2 seats left, and the audience that was coming in were kind of, 10-year-old kids to 7-year-old grandmothers, and just to kind of sit there and think about, the 5 years that had gone into kind of getting it to that point, was really rewarding. And I think at the end of it, that's the sort of things that you take away. But to get there, you've got to be viable, so you have to make money. That's it.
Great, thanks, Troy.